Well, good morning. Well, it's morning here where I am, coming from the other side of the world, but I'm here this morning joined with Chris. Chris and I are going to be taking you through another Facebook Live this morning. Really looking forward to this because what we've been doing over the last few weeks is really considering you've got a successful business or it's got some success. How do you get it to the next level? And what we've seen is the fundamentals are pretty much there in any business training that you'll come across. What makes distinctively different outcomes is the subtlety of the distinctions. And so what we're going to be sharing with you over a series of Facebook Lives is what we believe the necessary, subtle, and often really powerful distinctions are. And we call this our continual improvement series. Today, we're going to be looking at people because people make up your business. Even if you don't have systems, you've got good people, you will have a business because they'll create the systems. So business is in fact all about people. It's about your staff, yourself, and your customers. So that's why we've started here. So in thinking that through, one of the most common comments that we hear people say is that, yeah, we get it that people make up a business and that's our greatest satisfaction, our greatest fulfillment. And when we see their growth and evolution, it's fantastic. But equally, they are our biggest frustration, biggest challenge. They are fickle. We can do everything for them, but stuff comes back. It's the most unpredictable area. And without doubt, whenever we've done masterminds with business owners, that's one of the things that comes up on an ongoing basis. So we want to really look at this, address this, and begin to share with you some of the distinctions we feel are going to make a significant difference to your business. Chris, anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I would just say that all of these things that we're hearing can actually create a compounding effect that actually ripples across your organization and ultimately to your customers. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, so some of the things that we've seen and heard from people is that, they just don't get it. They're not on board. They're all about themselves. They don't, we don't really get the best out of them. And in fact, references the information that we have is that really businesses are operating around about 40% efficiency. And that's huge. So let's look at the problem. I mean, because, okay, people can be great, but what about the inverse of that? That is that they're our biggest stress inside the business, the issue. Attitudes, they appear not to care. They appear not to be loyal. They haven't quite got it. They're doing the bare minimum, what I call complying. They're not volunteering their discretionary effort. Their discretionary effort is at 5 to 5. They're going, oh, not going to go, versus, oh, this thing may take another 10, 15 minutes. Yes, I'm going to do it. And it's in fact that portion there that marks the difference between an average performance and extraordinary. That's what we're interested in. How do you get that level of performance out of your team? You can call it going the extra mile. We call it willingly volunteering their discretionary effort.
Right. So typically this comes across from your perspective that they're coming with problems, not solutions. Maybe their motivation isn't the right place for you or the rest of your team or for your customers. And really we'd like to hear from you. We're sharing what we've seen, obviously focusing on the challenging part of this, but if you have any thing you'd like to share, type it in, put it into the Facebook Live, and or message us as well. We'd like to hear what's going on in your world.
Great. So what is this ripple effect? Well, it starts with you. You're at the center. You're the one that sees, you have the overview of the business and you're seeing most. So if it is that you have the understanding, the ongoing repetitive thought process, or the belief that your staff are difficult, they're stressful, they're always, it may appear this way, they're always getting it wrong, then what that causes in you is a certain internal state of being. It's like a constriction. And how that comes across in the behavior is that, and your staff can pick it up, that they're very, very aware of where you are, your energy levels. They'll pick it up, they'll recognize that your communications can be short and abrupt. The expression of frustration, either the look on your face or the tonality of how you speak to them. So that's at the core. And then what are the ripple effects beyond that?
Right. So basically what we see happening with your employee is that they feel that they're excluded from what's really going on. They have a lack of trust. They're not getting validated in the work that they're doing. And this triggers some things in their mind, right? They're going to be resistant. They're going to be protective of what it is they're doing. Bruce, you should probably talk about this fight, flight, freeze, appease. This is kind of your real area of study.
Absolutely. So when you're talking about the area of communication, we are looking at it, and the words you use is only 7%, but so much more comes across in the tonality, the look, the body language. And we have such an alert system inside us called our protection mechanism. It's identifying threat the whole time. It's cycling 5 times a second as to where threat lies. Now, if it sees anything which does not allow it or cause it to feel a sense of safety, it gets triggered. And so the triggering causes us to go into the fight, flight, freeze, and in today's world, appease behaviors. So basically they go into protect mode. They're not feeling open to communicate, and they start to withdraw. Now, the result of that is this whole appease thing is you have what's called sheeping. That is people around you who follow your direction and don't really question you. They don't feel confident. They don't feel safe to challenge you. And they just do what they know will get paid for and will not rock the boat. Or at worst, if they feel like they're really being constrained, they will express their power through sabotage. So you call it passive disengagement or active disengagement. The active disengagement is active sabotage. So there could be gossip, or it could be deliberate poor behavior and undermining and so forth. So if that's the message they're getting, this is what turns up in their mind and in their behaviors. Okay.
So here are some of the things that we've seen happen, and you may see this in your environment, you may have seen it in the past, elsewhere, you may be experiencing other things, but basically the symptoms that we feel are predominant are that people end up working in silos. They're not sharing, they're not integrating, they're not collaborative. They may hold information hostage to where other people are not able to access it. And basically that means that they're not able to work themselves out of a position. There's also an element of a revolving door, right? People coming in and out, they may leave for more money. They don't like the environment. And when that happens, they're not present, right? So it's not just that they don't show up for work, but when they do show up for work, they're not present. Bruce, I think you had called it their
presenteeism.
Is that presenteeism?
Presenteeism. Yeah, when they're present, when they're at work, but not physically present. And that can be either through distraction, the likes of Facebook, social media, and so forth, or it could be that they're just simply distracted or they can't be bothered. I mean, it's just doing the bare minimum. Yep.
Yeah. So there are other symptoms as well that we'll go deeper into, but effectively this can affect you and your employees in personal ways, right? Whether it's poor sleep, you're worried, etc. We'll talk a little bit more about some of those implications in a minute.
Yeah, so there's a ripple effect. And the research is that it only takes 3 days for any drop in energy inside your organization to be felt by your customers. So they'll pick it up because the change in behavior of your staff will alter their tonality, will alter their proactivity, and that gets picked up by the customer. They'll begin to feel it as this company doesn't really understand me, doesn't really understand my needs, isn't that interested. So again, that has a trigger effect on them. So we're talking about this triggering, it has a trigger effect. They won't really be actively supportive. They won't be going out of their way to speak highly of you, and certainly it's much easier to talk about what's wrong, and that's what they'll be doing. The results, okay, I think the research is that about 90% of people or customers who leave do so from a perceived indifference, and they just simply walk away, and they certainly don't give you referrals. So this is how the ripple effect of how you feel affects your staff and can affect your customers.
Yeah, that's a great connection from beginning to end.
So let's look at some of the neuroscience behind this, because you may or may not have heard what we've just talked about earlier. But what's important to see is that there is actually a neuroscience element. So this is called neuropsychology. These are the behaviors that come out of what happens in our brain. So really what you've got here on the left-hand side is if a person is triggered, they go into the fight, flight, freeze, appease area of themselves. They feel fear, they feel threatened, either physically or emotionally. They're not psychologically safe. It's automatic that we go into a self-obsession and we go into resist or skepticism. At the very best, we'll come to a skepticism. Oh, yeah, he says this, I don't really believe him. And so there's this withholding, there's this withdrawal. Now, the other side of that is what you want out of your staff, this discretionary effort that we're talking around, is you want them to be experimenting, innovating, creating, coming up with new ideas, sharing with their friends, this whole co-creation process. And they will only do that if they feel psychological safety. Now, one of the big things as a leader is that enables this is listening, and that's not news, but this shows you what actually happens. If you're present with your people and begin to actually listen, it helps to build that sense of trust, that sense of safety. So we've put this in a dashboard format, that really what you're looking for are the degrees of trust. If trust is low, then you're going to get resistant, skeptical. If it is conditional, then you'll get, well, yeah, maybe, wait and see. If it's high, then it moves over to the right to experiment and co-create it. And that's where they want to partner with you. The conversation is open. You have open feedback. And it is this virtuous cycle that you've all heard of, upwardly trending cycle. So we're still looking at the problem area, at the implications of that. There is a continuum. Chris.
Right. So when we think of the continuum, some of this may not be evident initially, right? You may not be in a place where you're thinking about what's the real big picture around this, but we like to bring people back to recognize that there is a continuum along the order of Maslow's hierarchy, right? And what we're trying to address is fixing it before it gets out of control and acknowledging what's actually going on from a higher level. The worst case is, thinking, I wish I had learned or done this earlier. And so that's really why we're talking about it today.
So as you're sitting there, it might be that there's some area of your business or some area with your people you're feeling stuck. So this is an indication. This is where we believe we can help, is if you are feeling in any way stuck, it feels like you don't know what the next steps are, or you've tried everything in the past and it's simply not working. Nothing works. They are all X. These are symptoms that we need to look and see if we can address and help you begin to think more differently about. The other thing too is, Chris, you're going to say something?
No, I was just going to say that. So that's why we were saying it's sometimes hard to imagine what's on the other side, right? You're stuck. You're thinking about what's right in front of you, not thinking of the long term, the big picture, how it's affecting you elsewhere, which gets to other people as well.
Yeah, that stuck is that whole concept of I'm in my business, not on my business. And that's one of the elements that when we're triggered, we look at just at what's in front of us as opposed to being able to see the full 360 degrees. And taking this continuum further is, if you're feeling frustration at work, if you have the belief system that business is overwhelming, that has a leakage impact that you cannot not take home. And so that'll start to interfere or interrupt or have a negative effect in your relationships. At the very minimum, you're not present, or at the extreme is that there is a brittleness, the fragility, and that is felt, and there's a ripple effect inside the family relationships area as well. So
yeah, and so the last thing you're thinking about really, Now,
No.
the last thing you're thinking about is your freedom, right? You're thinking about what's right in front of you, and until you've addressed the underlying problem, you're not going to be thinking about that longer term goal that you have, or what you'd really like your life to be like.
Yeah, that seems so far over the horizon. Don't even talk to me about it now. It's just so there's a disconnection. But that's what we're all about. We believe that it's important to have that consideration. So we haven't lost that perspective. We're maintaining that longer term aim, a long term gain of how do you feel that sense of liberation, that sense of freedom, because ultimately that's what your business is about. And therefore, the suggestions we're going to come up with is these are necessary steps and stages around how to actually achieve and be actively progressing along the continuum towards your freedom.
So here's what we see happening, and this may not be what's necessarily happening with you, but it definitely happens. Companies typically take a top-down approach. They focus on their mission, their vision, the values, having some kind of a plan, some kind of organizational hierarchy, and some of the advice will go, well, cut through the egos, get to the data, you plop your people into it from a top-down perspective, and the results of that are typically incremental. You're getting a percentage of what they're actually capable of doing, whereas what you really like is a multiple of, right? Some kind of 10x or 10 to the power of X, right? That's the goal that we're seeking. So
this is why it's so important to have the awareness of your communication and how you feel inside yourself around your people. Because if you have the mindset, and we've actually seen that this is advice given as to how you need to manage, cut through the egos, we should just know there's another part you need to be aware of, and how do you connect with people and how to help them, make them feel safe, because that's when you're going to get the best out of them. That's when they're going to feel comfortable in your presence. That's when they're going to be able to use all parts or elements of their brain, creativity and so forth, and want to deliver these ideas to you. If you come through from this perspective, top down, you're going to do what you're told, then it will cause them to move into threat circuits. It will reduce their thinking capacity, and they will withdraw, arguably actively sabotage.
So what's the alternative, right? The alternative is a bottom-up approach, one that is built around having an actual network of teams that all of whom have input, collaborate. This is addressing those internal needs that everybody has. People are actually leaders of their own work. It's more of a flat organizational chart. The ideas that come out of that are then treated as projects, right? There's an element of continual improvement within the work that they're doing, because those inputs are actively being sought. And finally, when you get all that information, it's a matter of measuring it, reporting on it with transparency and accountability at every level within the organization. I think, Bruce, you probably have some thoughts on how this actually impacts people from their internal needs around safety.
Yeah, well, one of the biggest things is a sense of validation. What I've found is around loyalty, the biggest thing that enables a person to stay with the business and want to contribute is a sense of validation of being heard, being recognized, being seen. And so when you go to your people and say, what do you think around this? They now feel more validated. So rather than simply being an economic unit coming along and doing a particular job, they are now seen as valuable contributors. And so what we're talking about here, this network of teams, cross-functional teams, and everyone becomes responsible, and there's equal voices in the room contributing to the ideas going forward. It's what I call everyone in the organization wearing bifocals, so a set of spectacles with, you can see short sightedness up close, and you can see long-sightedness. Short-sightedness is simply doing the job in front of you. Long-sightedness is doing and contributing to the long-term capability and adding value to the company. So these days, it's no longer a matter of simply doing what you're told to do and contributing at that level. It's contribution at the more strategic level, which is what we're talking about here with the network of teams.
Yep, and it becomes a holistic system, right? It's engaging everybody. It's not just a collaboration. It's an actual system that's involving everybody in the organization, and it really is a system of management, right? So we'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide. What does that system of management actually do and accomplish?
So high level view, we live in a VUCA world. VUCA, I don't know if you've heard of the phrase, but volatile, uncertain, complex or complicated and ambiguous. And this is becoming more the norm. So how do you prepare? How do you plan? How do you work through when you have at best 60% of the information you need? Well, you as one person don't know. Is what's required is what's called radical collaboration, which is what we're talking about with the network of teams. So the practicality of moving forward is you need to keep everyone involved because of the external backdrop of the world that we live in and the commercial world we live in. But also, how do you keep your people engaged? That is, keep them activated and contributing, is building the sense of trust, psychological trust. So in that way, you're able to tap into your people and they become your company's think tank. So they become the source of ideas. This is where creativity, innovation, new ideas come from. And what you need is a system, an actual system, an online application, as well as education to support that. So you need that accountability, you need that system, that structure.
Absolutely. So you're getting your people involved in the process, the improvement within the business, to create that continuous improvement cycle, and fixing issues once, right? Fix the issue once, move on, and go on to the issue, challenge, opportunity. And really a big distinction here is that it celebrates that process of getting people to report issues rather than to hold on to them and, for fear of some kind of reprisal or retribution. The idea is to focus on what's working, what it is you want, and to do that, you have to identify the things that aren't working and that need attention, and resolve them once and forever. So really what this is accomplishing is it's giving you one way, one company way, one management way that everybody operates. So Bruce, you had one really good insight into this about just a different way of framing this for people, with one or two words that will trigger that partner co-creator approach.
Okay, so this is simply just one of the processes that we go through. Again, the subtle distinctions. These are the subtle distinctions. Most businesses approach direction through vision. That's business 101. One of the subtle differences we approach it through is what's called resonant vision. Resonant because it resonates. Every cell in your body resonates. Now you imagine getting everyone inside your organization feeling that level of intensity, enthusiasm, and energy because they help create it. That's just one of the distinctions that we cover off. It's called a resonant vision.
Yeah, and one of the ways of accomplishing that really is talking about how we do it, right? Using the word we, using the concept of doing this together, that automatically flips people from that fear state to that safety state where there's going from a low level of trust to a high level of trust.
Yeah, the research is, if you ask the question, what is one of the most powerful words a leader can use? The word is together. Makes sense now. Hopefully you're beginning to see how all of these different components are marrying together. Is that when we say we are doing this together or together we can do it, it includes everyone and starts to move them into that co-creation, partnering part of their brain.
Yep. So now you're probably wondering, what do I do? And we tried to do this kind of briefly today, and we went well over what we thought we were going to get from a time perspective. So thanks for listening in, and we're going to work on kind of tightening up the time on this. But really, the idea here was to get you to think, right? And we obviously would love to understand exactly what's going on in your world, understand your mind, so that you can give us some idea of what's going on in the minds of your people, and understand what's going on in your business, right? So there's really only one way to do that, and that's to have some level of conversation. So we appreciate that your business is different. We probably didn't hit on exactly what's going on there. Hopefully we touched upon a few things that resonated with you, but we'd love to talk. And simple as that. If any of this did hit you, and if you would like to dive into things a little bit further to explain your situation, we're happy to have that conversation. And it's as easy as just messaging Bruce or myself on Facebook. If you're connected with us on LinkedIn, you can do that as well. Or provide feedback on the Facebook Live. Be vulnerable, open up, and share what's going on. Anything else, Bruce?
Fantastic. No, that's fine. Hopefully you found today useful, stimulating. The idea here is we're looking to give you, as I said earlier, to give you different approaches. So inverting common thinking, common training, common instruction, because it's in the inversion that you actually get a new perspective, and perspectives that work, very powerful impacts. So that's all from me.
Yep, thanks. We'll be back. We're going to bring other topics. We're going to dive into some of the stuff greater detail, but appreciate your listening, and we want to hear from you. Thanks.
Okay. Bye-bye now.